Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest says there are moments in life when something happens, life alters, and your entire perception transforms instantaneously. For her, that moment was 22 years ago when she was holding her stillborn son in her arms just after giving birth to him. Tears were streaming down her face as she looked at his beautiful body and realized his body was still there, but he wasn't. She realized he wasn't his body. He is a spiritual being. She lives in LA, where she has been featured on the cover of magazines, on radio, and as seen on NBC, CBS, Fox, and ABC. Her mission is awakening 1 billion people globally to their divinity and life's purpose, and assisting them in manifesting their dreams. She teaches people how to reprogram their subconscious, align with their personal truth and universal laws, and create their daily spiritual practice. She mentors people one-on-one on a body, mind, and spiritual level. She believes that when someone awakens, they naturally have a gift and message to bring to the world. After many years of working with a wide range of clients, from top celebrities to single mothers, she wanted to bring her programs to the world. She believes that the route to happiness and fulfillment is not just knowing the truth, but living the truth. Welcome to the show, Dr. Erin.
Mm-hmm. So great to be here, Matt. So funny, I haven't had anyone read my full bio on an interview, so that's fascinating. Thank you. So honored to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. I know what you mean about the bio. I was interviewed one a few weeks ago, and it's kind of strange hearing it on the other side. But it was definitely a joy to read it. We got connected recently, and I looked at your work and was just really grateful for you, as you say, walking the path. It's two different things to know it, to think about it, to put a little toe in there, but to go all the way in and to be living it is beautiful to see. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sharing this real quick on my other pages, so I don't mean to be rude. Just sharing it real quick on a couple of the pages, so make sure that people can tune in right away, because I know people, this isn't just about us, obviously, right? This is about having a community and making a difference in the world. So the more we can share, and anyone watching, if your heart desires to share, it's important, because all these conscious conversations are impact everyone. So I wasn't able to share on one of the pages, but was able to on another. So I'll do that after. So yeah. So how are you, Matt? Good to connect with you here.
Yeah, you too. And just on that point, some of my listeners don't know that there's a YouTube channel and Facebook Lives, and the reason why I like to do the video is because there's so much communication non-verbally, and so when somebody is saying something pretty far out there, maybe something that people can't understand, when you look at their face and you understand their background, you can kind of feel that they're telling you the truth. And when somebody is manipulating you and they have maybe not your best intentions at heart, you can feel it and you can see it. So I think it's really important. So to dive in, body language. Yeah, 100%.
Body language.
And the eyes too. The eyes, the windows to the soul is very important.
Right.
So before we get in, because I know you've been doing a lot of work here, super fascinating. Do you want to give a little bit about your background, how you got to where you are today? I know your story is it really hits home. It's really powerful, and the way that you're kind of moving through that and sharing as a result is pretty amazing.
Sure. I guess I think, like, who's out there and why do they give a shit about this talk? You know what I mean? That's where I'm always thinking, like, what, And, today we had more big news in LA, Russell Simmons stepping down from all of his platforms and everything else. So if you're anybody out there in the world that's kind of going, what the hell is going on? It's a lot of chaos. Or if you're somebody who really is desiring to live a powerful life, or you're somebody that, is going through depression, hard times, or just desiring to be the best, highest self for themselves, I think that my story, like so many stories, are really just the human story, the story of coming into this lifetime. I was born into a family that, my parents got divorced when I was 2. I lived in like a hippie commune thing, kind of up in the hills of Santa Barbara. Typical California child, no real rules, no religion, just kind of all over the place. Ended up, trying drugs and alcohol in high school, got date raped in high school, had an eating disorder from 17 to 20, thought everything would be solved if I just got married at 21, and had a stillborn at 22, which rocked my world. And I had to go in I was full term, and my baby died in my belly, and I had to go in and give birth to his body, and was in total kind of shock. I went to the mortician's house the next day and was alone in a very dark room down in the basement, and realized, looking at his body, that he's gone and his body was here. And I went, I don't care what I do in this lifetime, but I surrender to knowing that the most important thing is for me to figure out why I'm here. And so in that, just began to go on the journey of meditation primarily. I was kind of anti-religion at that point in my life because I had just heard so many horror stories, but yet I wanted to know what was going on in some of those great texts. I ended up studying some of those along the way, obviously, and just began to dive deep. I never thought in a million years I'd become a doctor of divinity. For me, it was more about healing and doing my own work. And in that, like Joseph Campbell, the student becomes the teacher, and just began to realize that as I expanded my consciousness, everything changed. All healing took place. My spiritual abilities turned on, my empowerment, money became affluent, relationships expanded, and I realized that, there's a whole hell of a lot going on here compared to what they tell us there is, and all of our programming in school and the movies and everything else. And so just living a life that I love, living a life beyond my wildest dreams.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's incredible. You've had such, let's say, just traumatic experiences, traumatic life experiences that, one could easily say, oh, well, because of this experience, this is the way that my life is now. And you hold that as kind of a crutch where this pain you don't really move through. It becomes this anchor. And I actually touched about it a lot on the podcast, is how to take pain like that and transform it. And I know that it's not easy. Maybe we can just start there with somebody that is going through trauma, because it might not even be on the scale that you had. Yours was quite the scale. Do you have any just tips or advice for somebody that's going through something really challenging and to begin to move through?
Mm-hmm. I think that trauma work is the primary. If you're going to do awakening work or empowerment work, I believe trauma work is always the first work. I believe that is, my sister, I always refer to my sister because she is a cognitive therapist, and their work is very similar to spiritual work in that we both are dealing with the subconscious. Because when you understand the truth is that our subconscious mind, we're one entity as a human race. So our subconscious mind is actually linked into collective consciousness and cosmic consciousness. And so anytime there's trauma in the subconscious, basically it is what we have commanded in those traumatic moments. So the subconscious mind is informed and imprinted by emotions. And when we have traumatic experiences that are based in intense emotions, whatever is decided in that emotion is imprinted like a stamp that goes and transcends your entire life. So the moment you have, say, for example, when my parents got divorced when I was a little girl, through reverie, I remember this, I was actually in a crib with my mother. My mom and my father went off to Europe for a month, left me at 6 months old, and I was in a crib with her mother, which was not a very loving mother, and I needed love, and I couldn't get love, and I decided I don't need love. And it was so imprinted, and it's been so imprinted in my entire life. It has played out in every single relationship of my life. I don't need love. And guess what? I need love. So I had to go back in there, neutralize the pictures, neutralize that emotion, and be able to get freed up somewhat from that command. So everybody has this, whether you're a war vet dealing with PTSD, because pain and suffering is relative, right? Somebody could be traumatized by someone, looking at them wrong on the jungle gym as a little kid, right? So trauma is relative, and we all have trauma. Every last one of us has trauma. So anywhere that we have resistance in our life or a limiting belief is always trauma-based.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. One of the ways that I put it is, like you talked about energy, right? And when you're a kid, you're really fragile. And one of the things that I learned in looking at the development of consciousness is that, from 0 to 3, everything's going in, and you're just susceptible to everything. And even up until 5 and 7 years old, especially 5, that you don't have what's called the critical factor, or your consciousness to kind of understand what goes in, it doesn't go in. So you're just accepting everything. And that's the challenge to overcome it when you're older, so it doesn't affect the decisions you make. So you're not doing them based on feel or fear or the past trauma, because when it happened to you, you were so young, it just implanted in there. And then you started to change how you experience life and how you make decisions because of this trauma. And unless you go back in and have a look at it and essentially take out the magnetic charge of that memory, or take out that power that you're not even aware of why you're making decisions like this. So you work a lot with the subconscious mind. Can you give somebody maybe like one of your favorite practices or tools if they have like a piece of
Sure.
trauma that they want to go in some of the ways
Yeah,
you
and
work?
just to like also distinguish, like, how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? Do you want to go in this lifetime of your trauma, or do you want to go all lifetimes? Because most people's trauma actually is playing out in this lifetime as trauma and things that happened and way, way, way back on your DNA. So, that's just a little tidbit, right? We want to keep it really practical today and give some tips and keys for people to figure out what's going on with them subconsciously. But I also really want to know the truth that we're living in a DNA that has all kinds of stuff going on, and the things that we've implanted in over many, many lifetimes. But so, yes, so
Right.
what can you do? Yep.
To agree to your point, though, because I've had some people have talked about this on the show, is that something from a past life um, will basically imprint in this life, and sometimes you'll be running a pattern, you don't even know about it. And for people who have trouble with the past life type of thing, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is coming out with another new book, really leading edge technology on how to heal yourself using your thoughts. People in his programs, when I did it as his advance, and I know he has some stories as well, where people will actually, through the meditations over and over, will experience a past life directly. And then they're like, oh my goodness. And it'll make so much sense on the way that they're living their life now. So for people, that's like a little bit of a thought, like a stretch for them. I know people personally who have had those experiences. And the other thing is too, I've heard this as well, and I don't know if you agree or not, I'll get your opinion, but that also subconsciously we're connected to all things. So the trauma of the planet, all of the wars, everything, we're at least partially responsible. We are responsible for everything, because we have to take responsibility for all things to heal all things. And so that trauma is in there as well. And so the more awareness we bring to it, the better. So I just wanted to kind of,
Yeah.
give that to you as
Yeah,
well,
Joe
because I'm definitely on
Dispenza
the same
is
page.
great. We just did some Q&A. I did some moderation of the Q&As for Heal documentary. So anyone out there that highly recommend watching that documentary. It's it's 101 in my opinion as far as spirituality and realizing that we cause our health things. But for most people, 101 is very advanced. These concepts are really new to people. But if you really want to go really, really deep, yeah, imagination. Put it this way: if you can imagine that the wormhole into past lives is through imagination. And when you go in and you're with a client and you begin to do reverie, and you begin to, all of a sudden, they'll go down this wormhole of kind of like, they feel like it's almost like they're kind of telling a story, but it's like as if all of a sudden they go in this movie and they're part of this movie. And oftentimes it's actually really real, because the truth of the matter is this: all spirituality is an identity shift. It's the reality that it's all coming from spirit. And so if you really want to know the truth is that we are all lifetimes. We are all lifetimes. So anything that's ever happened to any of us has happened to all of us. And we know that. We're not the individual consciousness. We're individual consciousness, we're collective consciousness, and we're cosmic consciousness. That's our consciousness, right? So, of course, the subconscious, and science has proven this, we are one with all. Anything that's touched is connected. And because if you want to even be a scientist with the Big Bang Theory, we have all touched at one point in time. We're like a big organism, like the aspen trees in, Colorado. It looks like we're all individuals up here, but down at the root of our subconscious, we're all one entity. So of course, I mean, it's like common sense though. This is like common sense.
Yeah, I 100% agree with all that. So for you, let's say we're dealing with some sort of past trauma. Do you have a favorite technique? Because I've been looking at and working with the subconscious, the second that I started looking at studying consciousness, and in meditation and martial arts, it taught me the basics. And then right away I got into self hypnosis,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got into every other thing that I could look at, and the formula is the same, different kind of processes and nuances to each one. I'm just curious some of your favorite ones, if somebody wants to give one
Sure.
a try and go into that,
Yeah.
and try and
I
heal
think
a little bit.
there's in my opinion, there's two perspectives of dealing with the subconscious. You can either do one, which is knowing the truth, which is actually how we heal through revealing the truth. So when you know the truth, two things like light and dark, a dark room can't stay dark with light in it, right? So if you have a strong enough of a consciousness, you can simply know the truth. And in knowing the truth, it will dissolve all past trauma. It will dissolve any limiting belief within the soul. Most people aren't strong enough to do that. This is a practice. It's like being the best athlete you can ever be on this planet is your consciousness. And you know this as a Zen athlete, right? So this is the ultimate mastery. The master, if you want to say better than the best, athlete, boxer, a Jedi, is the master of consciousness, someone who can literally know the truth and see through any problem, any wall, anything in life, right? Very, very advanced human being, very, very advanced spiritual consciousness. Okay. The other is to go back into trauma. And you can begin to go through whatever is really holding mental pictures in this lifetime. And as you go earlier, similar, you go back. So this is the ticket when you're going back in that direction. You don't want to tell the story. As the Vedas say, as it is. So anytime you go back into past trauma, and it's why it's really better to do it with two people. You can do it on your own in meditation. It's a tricky thing. You need to know how to do it. I don't recommend it, but if people don't have the money or resources or don't know how to reach out at some level to do subconscious work, you can go into meditation and you can begin to think of one traumatic incident, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to go back in, you're going to say, I walked in the room. This happened. They were wearing this. I said this. They said that. And you feel whatever emotion is there, and you feel it, and you feel it, and you feel it. And you keep saying it over again, whatever happened, over and over again, until you can neutralize all of the mental pictures. What you don't want to do is this. You don't want to go back in and say, I walked in the room and I was so upset because I thought he was there alone. And you go into a story around the actual event, because it's the meaning that we put around things that create the trauma of a positive or negative meaning. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to as is the traumatic experience. And I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I'm totally with you.
Okay, good. Mm-hmm. And so it's just depends. It's a determinism, right? So if you can do it with two people, it's even better, because it's hard sometimes to keep going over that incident over and over again. In therapy, they call it prolonged therapy. In spiritual work, we call it Socrates processes or oracle processes. They're the same.
Right. Yeah. Well, one of my favorite ones when working with people is to use, I learned it from neuro-linguistic programming, and it's going through the
Mm-hmm.
experience and then just viewing it as your older self, as the observer, and stepping out. And then you could even step out again. And we're basically trying to neutralize the charge. And I've talked about this on the podcast a little bit, where,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
yeah, where I kind of understand it is, I've heard through a course that I'm doing that your body is storing all of the memory of life, and it's basically, so from about around 5 years old, you realize that your body's just storing the memory, and you have about a terabyte of hard drive space. And so the more, if you start with a 4K TV of eyes, but then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I better limit this information input, and you downgrade everything. But when you have a traumatic experience, it's like your regular day will be, zero point 0.5 gigs, and the traumatic experience is like 6 gigs of trauma, and it's holding it there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the charge, that's the emotion, that energy is affecting everything you do. And so when you can pull out the energetic charge from it, you heal the trauma, and it doesn't dictate the way that you experience or perceive new experiences. When you meet a person or you're making a decision, you're taking out that negative charge that wants to protect you. It's not trying to hurt you, it's trying to prevent that pain that you've had before. So it's your body kind of working on your side to keep you alive, but it really doesn't serve your highest purpose.
The computer is one of my favorite analogies of how we work in our consciousness. So if you have a computer, the actual computer is the actual hard. It's the what is it? It's the computer. It's our body. Okay. It's what do we call it? The hard drive.
Hardware.
The hardware. Yes. Okay. Secondly is the software, right? So you're programming. So if you have it's like upgrading your phone, right? Until the new updates, which suck. But before that, it was great to get updates, right? We got more use out of it. So when we release limiting beliefs, we have new software in our computer, right? So we always want to update our software to the truth. Okay. And then we have basically on your computer, sometimes it gets jammed up, right? It has that little spinning ball. That's because we have too many programs opened. And that is exactly what happens with trauma in the subconscious mind. All those mental pictures that are playing all the time is because they're not complete. Your soul is calling them up to have them be completed. So if you have them up on your screen and they're all freaking all over your screen, your whole computer gets jammed up. Okay. So we've got to close down those different files. And that's what subconscious work is. We're closing down and completing those files along the way. And then we have memory. And memory is a whole other thing that is a very, very deep topic, which we're not going to get in today. Has to do with your DNA and has to do with you going into a completely different realm.
Yeah, well, I love your analogy. I fully agree, and I think that will add a lot of clarity to a lot of people. We're running in these loops. I would love this app that showed you what you think about every day. You know what I mean? So it's a printout of the 70 to 90,000 thoughts you have, and you'll see it probably matches your reality, and you'll be able to pick these out. And if we have algorithms to code, what the repetitive thoughts are and start to kind of weed our internal process. And this is why meditation is so important, because that's what you're doing through your conscious awareness. And memory is extremely fascinating. Everything is around memory. And doing Nassim Haramein's work in the Resonance Science Foundation, they talk about space memory. And so again, we're not just talking
records.
Yeah,
you can call it whatever you want, but every ounce of everything that's ever existed is on your track. Fascinating.
So it is fascinating. And this is kind of, leading into my next question or topic would be, we are moving through this awakening process. Maybe this, people will say it's the awakening or whatever. And some people who don't vibe with it yet are like, this is some new age horse crap. And in this realm, there is a lot of new age horse crap. I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of people coming in without the full understanding, or they've had a glimpse of it. And from their perspective, what I realize is that if you are, going around and let's say you're not aware of how you think or the past programming or whatever, and you get a glimpse of the other side, it's going to be huge for you. It's going to be night and day, and you'll want to share that, but it takes a while to get the complete understanding. And I think as a part of this, what I've read and heard about way before this started happening was how the dark will come to light. And as you spoke about today, a lot of that's coming. So that you can see out there's chaos, but this is a part of it. This is the rise of the subconscious mind, all that dirty stuff, and people, what I've looked at it as far as, war and how the world is run, we aren't even scratching the surface of the terrible stuff that happens on this planet. This is the nicest, this is like getting bit by a little tiny Shih Tzu, you know what I mean? In reality, there are lions out there. And when you realize that, it's going to be traumatic. And so I think we're moving through this as a collective because we have to see it, to heal it, to know that we never want to go back to that again. And so I just wanted to see if you wanted to speak on that a little bit and what you see happening.
That. Yeah, we live in a relative world. This is a fun, incredible experience. It's not going to last very long, so enjoy it while it lasts. We are experiencing being masters of limitation, which is impossible. So it's like God saying, let me play a great game of feeling like I can be the effect of something, which is never the truth. But what's interesting right now is, of course, we have this divine feminine rising right now. with all the sexual harassment stuff happening in Los Angeles. And I think it's important to, number one, for sure, acknowledge and see and hear the voices, knowing that this is real at whatever level. At a relative level, this is very, very real for people. Secondly, I think it's important to hold accountability for us to have agreements as culture of what we feel is right and wrong, and know that we should really honor that as the masses have come to agreements that that's what we're here for, we have to have agreement. And having said that, we also have to have compassion, that nothing has happened to anybody that is not the culmination of the allness. And so even for, the men acting out at whatever level, be it wrong, that at whatever level there is, they didn't get that from nowhere, right? They didn't get that programming. They didn't get their own destructive patterns from nowhere. We are in this together. This is a sum total of all of the choices we've made as a culture and as our race. And so it's important to hold people accountable, put down the law, put down the rules, but also have compassion and know that that to forgive is really to free yourself of the chains. And I know personally, coming from, being raped or being from, dysfunctional family or anything like that, that it doesn't do any good. You gotta complete that cycle, say you're sorry, hold people accountable, and move on to create something that we want to create in the world. So it's an interesting time, and I'm not sure what's going to happen exactly, but I know this, that we have heaven and hell. There's not one or the other. We have both. So as much as there is darkness and insanity and wars and things that are beyond that we even know that are going on in this world, people are being cut and their organs taken out of their body for money right now. There are people being beheaded. There are sex slaves. There are, you name it, you can think, if you can conceive it, it's going on in this planet. There's people being tortured as we speak. And there's as much light and beauty and innovation and invention and community going on right now. And guess what? We can't have one without the other. We're in a relative dimension. And so I just say, thank you. I'm going to now create what I choose to create and do the best I can do. And I'm not going to focus on the negative for me personally. I'm going to be proactive. So that's all I can do.
That's incredible. I agree with what you're saying, and I'll just add to that in wherever we put our focus, it will grow. And so, I think that on one hand, it's important to understand that, there is trauma, and not trauma, but beyond trauma, just challenges on the planet, that it can be dark, that these things are happening. It's not saying we don't understand that, when it comes up, but do we focus on, hating and picketing and doing all these things, or do we build the solution? And that's where we can kind of connect with ourselves and figure out what solution we want to build. And if you look at the planet and you see a problem, well, all there are opportunities to create a solution, and to create a solution within a community. And I think that part of this awakening ascension process will be with community, with like-minded people, with people who are out of that competition, which is old paradigm stuff, into collaboration, and to start to care for all. So I think it's really important that where we put our focus, and also when you are going to start doing this, you free yourself, because you're going to pick a problem or focus on something that matters to you. And that's going to light you up. That's going to make you feel good each day to know that you're contributing, you're doing something that matters to you, not just kind of being a cog in the wheel because this is the way that they said it was supposed to be, and you're kind of lost in it, when now you're actually making a difference with people on something that matters to you. So I think that it's really important.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing that you think about. It's like we were endowed with free will. We can, use our energy to fucking kill people, or we can use our energy to love people. It's like, and it's fascinating to me that people are so distraught by this, because it's like, that's what we're here for. Like, we're here to scrape our knees on the jungle gym of life and swing on the swing set, and there's all different types. There's people that are here to just destroy. That's their, and we as a culture, we need to put rules in, of course, figure out how to not have them destroy all of us and have, how do we do that? How do we put rules and regulations in that actually work? And that is an art. That's a very, very high art to, put rules and regulations that can be actually implemented without starting wars across the world. That is an art. And I hand it off to anybody that's able to take that on.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one, because I think that, with rules and regulation, the reason why we're needing more rules, and the government gives you a new rule for this and a new rule for this and a new rule for this. This is just because we're being, I think, on a big scale, controlled, manipulated, and we have a lot of external forces that aren't serving our highest good. And then when we move into a society that has peace and love and collaboration and community at its heart, we're not going to need those things. So when you look at the old native cultures, they were self-policing, that everything, when somebody didn't have clothes or food, the community provided for them because it made sense. So you don't need a lot of rules and regulation. And then when somebody would act out and maybe do something horrendous, what they would do is that they would tend to the victim, but they would actually tend to the person who did the harm, because they would know that they were actually the one who was more broken, which is really fascinating. And so our culture doesn't do that. So when we start to heal ourselves, we don't need rules and regulation. We need people to stop. The reason why we have them is because nobody has enough. We're in this competition, and people need food, and then people need this TV to make themselves feel good. So I think that as we begin to clean up our own lives and our own communities, it's going to become less. And then everybody will be on the same page, because it'll just make sense. It'll be limited in don't steal your neighbor's stuff. Obviously don't go stab them right in the face.
Listening in people will listen in and hear what you just said and say, this guy's delusional. It's not going to happen, right? Like, because that's like, in that not everybody thinks like you. It'd be great for your tribe of 20 people for it to be some, abyss. But the reality out there is that not everybody thinks like you think. And so there is a place that we have to have laws and rules and whatever. It's great if we went back, but guess what? We don't go back, we go forward. And, we're in a predicament. We're in a big predicament. It's great if we could all spiritually heal and, come to our senses and have an incredible tribe that we all thrive and we hold each other in the highest whatever. But that's not what's going on in the world right now. So how do we deal with that spiritually? Because sometimes it takes force, sometimes it takes control, sometimes it takes rules. And I think that that's where people don't like the new age scene, because they're like, these people are completely delusional, because we want to go back to a fantasy state, and we're not in that state. That's not the reality of the world right now. So knowing that, what do we do as spiritual leaders? What do we do? And that's where it's an individual thing here.
Well, it's tough too. And definitely I agree with that. I think that the people doing harm need to be held accountable. It's 100% accountability. So obviously no killing. Lots of Wall Street guys should be going to jail. Lots of warmongers should be going to jail. Like that exists. But I think that we have a small group of people, a small percentage of the people creating a lot of harm on the planet. And when people are living in more harmony, we're going to need less, right? Right now, everybody should be held accountable. And when that happens, and marijuana is like a big thing, and this is the other side, right? So it's like, oh, we're going to regulate everything. You're going to regulate a plant. You know what I mean? I'm like a bear out in the woods. You want to tell me what I can and cannot do with my own consciousness? I do not think so. And so then we have this and this is what, they've just gone too far, because we're being suppressed. But when we live in a society that makes sense, and the people who are doing harm are accountable, and then they're removed and, basically made accountable, then it's going to be a shift. And that's what I hope to see. But we are where we are now. And this is where a lot of the people doing this harm are coming to light. All this stuff that's going on in Hollywood. And, I've known about that stuff for years. And like you said, there's a lot worse stuff going on. And those people, 100%, the faster we can make them accountable and remove them and stop their influence, we're going to be shifting things really quick. So I totally agree with you there. So where I want to go with this, which I think is a nice segue, is, your mission is such a powerful and beautiful mission, to awaken 1 billion people globally to their divinity, life's purpose, and assisting them in manifesting their dreams. So for you, what do you find as like awakening, like what it means to be like awakened and not awakened? I did a video recently on,
Mm.
people are using woke, and I know it means like awaken, but I was like, but so many people are using it. I know they have no idea what it means. So for you,
Right?
when you're sharing that, like how do you define and distinguish those terms?
That's a great question. I think there's a gradient, right? Like you can start feeling like you're awake, like you said, like if you are really asleep and then you have one epiphany, you're like, whoa, I never saw life like that, dude, hand me the bong. You know what I mean? Like, so there's like, there's like that level. And then there's the level of like really going to the Jedi, realm. So, I don't have a distinction as far as like how awoken people need to get. But I know this for myself. When you awaken, you realize the impact that you have and your oneness with other human beings, you can't help but want to serve and want to make a difference in the world. That's one of the common denominators that I find when I interview people. And so for me, it's awakening and having the butterfly effect of people awakening and how that forms into the butterfly effect across the world. So like right now, I'm getting involved with a karma coin, a company where you pay it forward and then you give somebody coin, and it has a little number on it, and we'll be able to track the butterfly effect of how that goes across the world and begin to be inspired, to do more good deeds. And so all I know is that, through the shows, through Awakening, through Good Morning La La Land, and through Dr. Erin's show, we don't know how many people's lives we touch, but what I know is that the compounding of it and the butterfly effect, it's easy to calculate it to be 1 billion people. So we're on our mission, we're moving forward, and it's all I know how to do. I'm not interested in politics. I'm not interested in focusing on that. If I was, I would do that. I'm interested in expanding consciousness and having a conscious conversation and having people basically delayer their consciousness so that they can begin to have the truth bubble up. And in that truth, who knows how that affects the world.
Amazing. I love that. Well, the karma coin reminds me of my buddy Johnny Ronca, who has a company called Love on Revolution. And essentially, it's a bracelet that has a code on it. And so, let's say you buy someone's coffee, or you could give them a compliment. Once you do that, you give them the bracelet, and then it tracks everything that it goes through. So, you get to see where that basically love experiment goes on to. So maybe there could be a tie in there, but
Yeah,
tying it to
totally.
currency, and really we're just giving opportunities for people to do good deeds. We're kind of gamifying good deeds, which is great, because when you see how much of an effect that could have, and it measures you can measure it, it's going to encourage you to do more, because like, oh, you know what, this good deed did make a difference. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that you know we're more powerful in those little tiny, like you butterfly effect. It goes farther than we think. And especially when you get that collective and you start doing it and you do repetitively, you really start to see the power and magnification of that. So I think that's amazing.
That's a total high. If anyone is out there and they're watching, they've never done some service, and it's like you think it would be, a great experience for the person that's receiving that deed. It's like I've had times when I've done something like, whoa, that's like I get so high off of it. You're like, it's incredible the high when you do some random act that's just out of the blue for somebody. It's amazing.
Mhm.
Go try it out.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think, one of the things that I'll talk about on the podcast quite consistently is the thing that I notice with the people that I interview, they go from service to self to service to other. And this is another big piece of the shift. So when we as communities, and over 50%, 80%, 90% of the planet is gone, from service to self, from what can I get and how can I accumulate gold coins and how can I get bigger cars, to how can I contribute to everybody to make the world a better place and to have what I need, naturally, the things that need to control us are going to kind of weave away, and we're going to live in a more freeing society. And what I notice from people having real fulfillment is they connect with what it is that their gift is, kind of like what you say in your bio. I totally agree with that. When somebody awakens, they have a gift for the world, and that's like understanding we're all these unique flowers. And when you flower, you're only you. You know, you're going to express yourself on this planet as a unique part of everything. And so I'm just wondering if you can speak on that a little bit, because I think that it's so important that once we can kind of connect to what our gift is. So whether you're an artist, you know, and you are an artist, you're going to spread beauty through art, and that's amazing. That's your gift, whatever the case may be. So do you have any insight into how somebody might start
Yeah.
to move
I
into
have a
that direction?
formula. I have a formula that, I'm sure it's not the truth. It may not work for everybody, but every single person I've worked with it on, it's worked. So the formula goes like this. So many people want to find their purpose and calling. You know, we all want to find our purpose and calling. And the formula goes like this. Whatever uh, triumphs, you take your triumphs. So the hardest thing you've ever gone through in your life, and you basically whatever you've had triumph over, plus your passions, plus your skills equals your purpose and calling. So, for example, I mean, I've done this with many people, children up to adults. Let's see, for example, I had this little girl, I was working with this young group of kids in Vegas that are going to an alternative school. They've chosen, they don't care for traditional school, and they believe that the children are very innovative and think just the same as adults in their ability to create, right? So this one little girl, she has a little bit of a company that she is designing dresses. And I asked her, you know, what is the hardest thing you've ever gone through? And she said, when my parents got divorced, and she started crying. And she said, it was really hard, you know, having my dad go away. And she said, so when I began to make those dresses, I would think of, you know, having a little girl feel pretty and feel special, even though her parents, you know, weren't there or whatever. And we took her skills, her passion was making the dresses, and her skill set really was designing the dresses, but also really she was very social. So she realized in that moment that if she could bring her story into her company that she was creating as a little girl, instead of just presenting these little dresses to the world, she presented them in the story of having a little girl feel special, loving herself enough to feel special and becoming, you know, the goddess that she is. And it just, you should have seen the light that came on in this little girl and how she just felt like all of a sudden what she loved to do had so much more meaning to it, and it became such a more of a purpose and calling for her. And so that's the formula. Take your triumphs. Like, we don't ever want to go to say somebody about entrepreneurship that hasn't struggled. If they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, why would we listen to them? They don't know how hard it is to become an entrepreneur and become successful. If we were trying to deal with somebody with weight loss, we would want somebody that's gone through hard times, that's had an eating disorder, or had been obese, that's overcome something. So we want that. We want that in our leaders. We want that. That becomes your purpose and calling. So take your triumphs, your trials and triumphs, plus your passion, plus your skill set equals your purpose and calling.
It's amazing. It's incredibly practical.
Go figure. It's very simple.
Yeah, super simple. I know we only have a little.
And if you haven't had a triumph, because people are like, wait, but I don't know, I'm still suffering, I'm still going. Then it's like Joseph Campbell says, follow your bliss, and the doors will open. Follow that healing, follow whatever it is that it's calling, and in that you will triumph, and in the triumph you'll get your calling.
I 100% agree with that. You know, Bashar and Abraham Hicks and a whole bunch of other people, they just say,
Love
continue.
Bashar.
Yeah, stay, you know, stay in your bliss, you know, follow your highest bliss. And it's the vibration, you know, how do you light up? It's really a vibrational game. And from, let's say, the 5D perspective, or just what I believe personally anyways, is that it's just coherent resonance. When you walk and meet somebody that is lit up and full of love and caring, you feel that. And not only do you feel it in that moment, but it resonates to all things, because we're in a vibrational universe. And so the best and most important thing you can do is to be in joy, is to be in peace, is to have a coherent state. And that's going to ripple out to all beings. I think they've done some really interesting, I don't know if this is true, I'll just put it out there, somebody can tell me, but the heartbeat gets measured across the earth in some super small amount of time, like a few seconds or something. And so that's really the essence of who you are. I don't know, I can't remember where I heard it from, but it was like, your heart is this like multi-dimensional engine, you know, that's right in the center, connecting you to the entire cosmos and infinity. And it's like, that's super neat. So the more coherent it is, then you're sending that out, right? Do you have a loving and open heart connected to all things, knowing you're an eternal divine being? Or are you scared crapless and worried about the guy next door taking all your stuff and running out of money and needing to grab? You're going to resonate at a different level. And so I think
It's like
they're fundamental
flow.
distinctions. Mm.
It's a total flow. Like oftentimes people come, they go, I want to find my soulmate, and they have this ideal kind of delusional scene. It's like, go out and actually just flow in love. It doesn't have to be with the one. They don't have to be perfect. And all of a sudden people start like kind of just getting out there, flirting a little bit, getting in that space. And all of a sudden it's raining men, as they say, right? Or like money, it's like, I have a hard time and they're hoarding all their money and they're like, they have no flow around business. It's like, go give of service, give of value, go give someone some money, go do whatever. Because if the universe is a flow, it's an exchange of energy. And if you're not in flow, you've turned off the spigot and it's just nothing's gonna happen.
Totally agree. Yep. I think maybe the last question I'll ask you, because I know you got to get on with your day and do amazing things. You work really hard. Mm-hmm. If you could, I kind of make it general, but if you could make, 2 or 3 fundamental changes on the planet right now, whether it's like everybody adopts a belief system, or we integrate a new technology, or we change a fundamental way we think, or everybody has to do a task, you know what I mean? Like sit down for 10 days and meditate, what 3 things would you offer the world that you believe could shift things pretty quickly?
That's a great question. I love that question. I would say that to teach children universal law, for me, I would say 1 and 2 for sure, teach universal law and teach people how to reprogram their subconscious mind. Those 2 things for sure. Those should be in our school system. They're very basic. They're easy to do if you understand how to do them. Those should be 2 basic things that every single human being should understand. Like you learn the alphabet, you learn how universal law works. You learn how to, tie your shoe. You learn how and how your subconscious works and how to reprogram that. So those are the 2 things. And then let's see, beyond that, what would I say? That's a good one. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I guess that I would want everybody to have they have to have 1 service that they do. It's like signing up for a chore list, right? You're in the house and everyone has to sign up for their chore list of this world. Like, what is the 1 thing that you're going to do of service? What's that signing up for that? Is that going to be that you're going to, go down and feed the homeless? Is that going to be that you're going to be of service to your grandmother forever? Pick 1 person you can be of service to, or 1 thing you can be of service to. You get to pick it. No one has to tell you what you have to do, but just to pick 1 thing. So those 3 things.
Awesome. Those are great. Do you want to, I have an understanding of universal law, but can you summarize that for somebody who may not have any idea what you're talking about? We're talking about the law of attraction. Yeah. We're talking about many universal laws. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Okay, great. That's a great question. So universal law, there's only 1 universal law. It's the law of cause and effect, but it's basically how we create. So it's a pretty advanced conversation, right? But so we create from consciousness, and consciousness creates the effects of this world. But so there's all aspects of it. For example, the law of vibration, the law of attraction, be that which you seek, the law of correspondence. So what you put out into the world has to be reflected back to you. The law of gender. There is thought that creates, and there's a medium, your subconscious, that is the womb of your thought. So we could go on and on, but basically bottom line is this. You have 2 choices in life with universal law. You get to create in harmony and have us thriving, or you get to invert it and you get to create chaos and discord, heaven and hell. So that's basically the bottom line. It's cause and effect, and we're here to use and direct energy. So for have children to learn this and go, let's see, I get to create love, or I get to create dysfunction. I get to create a bigger picture of what I put in my body, or I get to put junk food in and start feeling like crap. Oh, I get to hurt people's feelings and create terrible relationships, or I get to make good choices and be of service for others and have my relationships thrive. Very, very basic. I don't think they teach it in school at all. like it's some hidden thing that we just expect children to know, and they don't know. They have to be taught.
Amazing. Yep. 100%. I totally agree. And I think it's really powerful. And for me, my work for sure is with the athletes or whatever. I was like, why didn't I know this when I was a kid? If we could teach all kids this stuff right away, it would change everything instantly because,
Yeah,
rather than,
geography. Why would we teach geography before we taught like how we use our mind? Huh? Gee, So
yep,
I just think it's ridiculous our school system that way.
100%. One of the shifts that's here, one of the opportunities for change and growth to, rethink education and how we educate our kids and take more responsibility as parents and communities on getting our kids the best education, teaching them how to think and applying all these things because things are shifting right now and we have that opportunity right now. So totally agree.
Yep.
This has been fantastic. I appreciate you. I could talk to you all day and we'll have to do another round. Before I let you go, is there anything that you wish that I had asked you? Is there anything that you want to talk about before we leave? Or a final message for
I
everybody
guess you could
tuning in
just
today?
say that I'm a human being, I'm not perfect. I have my flaws. Um, I think it's time for spiritual leaders to get real and raw and know that, if we had it all figured out, we wouldn't be here in this realm anymore. To know the truth versus living the truth are two very different things. And I'm not here to say I completely live the truth. I'm here to say that these are principles that when I apply them, my life gets better. When I don't apply them, my life gets worse. And they're truths that all the greatest texts have taught. They're truths that live beyond the physics. They're all that stuff. And so I just ask people to live their own authentic truth, be authentic, try not hurt anyone, and just be authentic to yourself. And, the world will be a lot better.
Incredible. Yep. I swear to God, I've said almost that exact same closing sentence on a podcast before. It's like, what do you want people to know? I was like, I don't know. Just be kind and do your best, essentially. So just nobody knows what's going on. Yeah, incredible. I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for going
Yeah.
all in
Thanks, Matt.
and living it. I
All
appreciate you.
in. Here's the all in.
Yeah,
Have a
totally.
great day. So
Yeah, you
awesome to
too. We'll
connect.
see you later.
Okay.
Okay, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.